Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Ganta Radha Ganta Namostute Tapte Kanchan Gorangi Radhe Vrindaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Che Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Mudire Tulsi Radhe Golokananda Bhagwan ki Jai
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Hare Krishna Rina
Hare
ji
Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna Bhaiya, Hare Krishna everyone.
Tarun Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Prem right तो कल हम लोग श्लोक 34 पढ़ रहे थे ऑफ 7th अध्याय 7th स्कंद yeah there are total 12 skans 12 cantos हैं and we are on 7th canto right now प्रहलाद महाराज के बारे में पढ़ रहे हैं right and as what we have been reading is प्रहलाद महाराज giving the spiritual the transcendental message to all the students right all his friends in Gurukul and they are all sons of demons but Prahlāda Maharaj is advising them to become devotee of Lord Vishnu yeah and he's also telling them how did he hear this entire transcendental knowledge right in the womb yeah in the womb of Ayadu Hiranyakashipu's wife of course Prahlāda Maharaj's mother and he heard it while they were serving Narad Muni yeah so we'll continue reading कल हम लोग ये पढ़े थे 34th श्लोक where it's mentioned one who is situated in devotional service is certainly the controller of his senses and thus he is a liberated person when such a liberated person the pure devotee hears of the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord's incarnations for the performance of various pastimes his hair stands on one end on his body, tears fall from his eyes, and in his spiritual realization, his voice falters. Sometimes he very openly dances, sometimes he sings loudly, and sometimes he cries. Thus, he expresses his transcendental jubilation. Yeah. So, what Prahlāda Maharaj is saying that anyone who gets into such a devotional service, first of all, he likes to hear about the Leela, yeah, Bhagwan's pastimes, and that is what we are reading in Srimad Bhagavatam right now, right? It's all pastimes and all about the Bhagwan's various avatars and everything else, right? And then it's mentioned that Harsh, Utpulk, Ashru, Gadgadam, all those are different characteristics which happens at different points in time, right? So this is what we read yesterday. We'll start reading Shlok 35. Anilji.
यदा ग्रहग्रस्त एव क्वचिद्दश त्याक्रन्दते ध्यायति वन्दते जनम् मुहुश्वसन् वक्ति हरे जगत्पते नारायणेत्यात्मा मतिर्गतत्रपः. When a devotee becomes like a person haunted by a ghost, he laughs and very loudly chants about the qualities of the Lord. Sometimes he sits to perform meditation and he offers respects to every living entity. Considering him a devotee of the Lord, constantly breathing very heavily, he becomes careless of social etiquette and loudly chants like a madman. Hare Krishna, O my Lord, O Master of the universe. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah? So the devotee then chants Narayan, right? Vandate. So respects to every living entity. Says here, when one chants the holy name of the Lord in ecstasy, not caring for outward social conventions, it is to be understood that he is Atmamati. Yeah? In other words, his consciousness is turned towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prem.
Tada tada pumat punanmukt sammats bandhana swadbhav bhavanukrita shyakriti nirdigdbija nushayo mahisya bhakti prayogen samistya shokshadam. The devotee is then freed from all material contamination because he constantly thinks of the Lord's pastimes, and because his mind and body have been converted to spiritual qualities. Because of this intense devotional service, his ignorance, material consciousness, and all kinds of material desires are completely burned to ashes. This is the stage at which one can achieve the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah? So when he's totally devoted, what is being mentioned is he is Mukta Samast Bandhana. Yeah? He, yeah, he gets freed from all material contamination. And then Bhakti Prayogena, Adokshajam. Adokshas is the name of Lord Narayan. Adokshas means one who cannot be understood by the knowledge and the material indriyas, right? He's beyond those understanding. Is Adokshas. Yeah. And at which one can achieve the shelter of the lotus, of the Lord's lotus feet. It's a nice purport. Let's read this. Tarun.
When a devotee is completely purified, he becomes Anyabhilasita Sanya. In other words, all of his material desires become zero, being burnt to ashes, and he exists either as a Lord's servant, friend, father, mother, or conjugal lover. Because one thinks constantly in this way, one's present material body and mind are fully spiritualized, and the needs of one's material body completely vanish from one's existence. An iron rod put into a fire becomes warmer and warmer, and when it is red hot, it is no longer an iron rod but fire. Similarly, when a devotee constantly engages in devotional service and thinks of the Lord in his original Krishna consciousness, he no longer has any material activities, for his body is spiritualized. Advancement in Krishna consciousness is very powerful, and therefore, even during this life, such a devotee has achieved the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. This transcendental ecstatic existence of devotee was completely exhibited by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In this regard, Srila Madhavacharya writes as follows: Tad bhava bhavaha tad yatha sarupam bhakti kechit bhaktya vinriyanti jayanti cha ya yatheptistham kechit tusnim japanti iva kechit sobhya karina. The static condition of devotional service was completely exhibited by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who sometimes danced, sometimes cried, sometimes sang, sometimes remained silent, and sometimes chanted the holy name of the Lord. That is perfect spiritual existence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, and we just had Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Jayanti. Yeah, Rinaji.
अधोक्षजा लंब मिहा शुभात्मनः शरीरिणः संसृतिचक्रशातनं तद ब्रह्म निर्वाण सुखम विदुर्बुधा सस्ततो भजध्वम हृदये हृदयेश्वरम. The real problem of life is the repetition of birth and death, which is like a wheel rolling repeatedly up and down. This wheel, however, completely stops when one is in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, by the transcendental bliss realized from constant engagement in devotional service, one is completely liberated from material existence. All learned men know this. Therefore, my dear friends, O sons of Asuras, immediately begin meditating upon and worshipping the super soul within everyone's heart. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So who is speaking right now?
Dhruv Maharaj.
Prahlāda Maharaj, right?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So Prahlāda Maharaj, right? He is telling all the students, all his friends who are sons of Asuras, sons of demons, that you immediately begin meditating upon and worshipping the super soul within everyone's heart. Yeah. And he's saying, also he's telling all the people that the real problem of life is the repetition of birth and death, right? We think about so many problems in life, right? But the real problem of life is the repetition of birth and death, and which is like a chakra shatanam. Yeah, it's like a rolling chakra up and down, right? Non-stop birth and deaths. We don't know how many millions of that has happened, right? And so Brahma Nirvana Sukham is what is being mentioned. The transcendental bliss realized from constant engagement in devotional service. That's when one can be completely liberated from material existence. And so Prahlāda Maharaj is advising everyone, is telling them, yeah, stito bhajadhvam hridaye hriday ishvaram. Yeah, start devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Is what Prahlāda Maharaj is telling. Anilji?
Yeah. This cessation of all material happiness is called Nirvrati or Nirvana. Srila Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.38, Brahmanando Bhaved Esa Chet Parardha Gunkrataha Naiti Bhakti Sukham Bodhe Paramam Manu Tulam Api. If Brahmanand, the bliss of merging in the Brahman of effulgence, were multiplied 100 trillion times, it would still not equal even an atomic fragment of the ocean of transcendental bliss felt in devotional service. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Na Soshati Na Kankasati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mada Bhaktim Lavate Param. One who is transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward all living entities. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto the Lord. Bhagavad 18.54. Sorry, Bhagavad Gita 18.54. If one advances further from the Brahma Nirvana platform, one enters the stage of devotional service. Mad Bhaktam Labhate Param. The word Adhoksha Jalambham refers to keeping the mind always engaged in absolute truth, who is beyond the mind and material speculation. Sa vai manah Krishna padara vindayo. This is the result of deity worship. By constantly engaging in the service of the Lord and thinking of his lotus feet, one is automatically freed from all material contamination. Thus, the word Brahma Nirvana Sukham indicates that when one is in touch with the absolute truth, material sense gratification is completely nullified. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. So very nice. Couple of interesting thing which is mentioned here, right? The one interesting thing mentioned here is like if Brahma Ananda, yeah, Brahma Ananda is the bliss of merging in Brahma effulgence. Like what happens is, we lot of meditational practices where you try to do the self-realization, right? That's the Brahma realization. You do the self-realization of the soul. It's very powerful, right? A lot of Sant Mahatma doing tapasya for hundreds of years, actually. And they get this self-realization, which is very powerful. But what is being mentioned here is if that is multiplied, that bliss which you get by doing the self-realization is multiplied 100 trillion times. It would still not equal even an atomic fragment of the ocean of transcendental bliss felt in devotional service. Right? The importance of devotional service is being highlighted here, how high it is even above the Brahma realization. Yeah. And then Lord Shri Krishna, of course, in Bhagavad Gita is mentioning this as well, right? That as one advances from Brahma Nirvana platform, one enters the stage of devotional service. Yeah. And as we talked about, adokshas means, yeah, the absolute truth is beyond the mind and material speculation. The God is beyond the speculation. Yeah. And of course, by
in the stanza there, which word refers to 100 trillion? Which is it? Paradha?
this is no. So this one is in this shlok, not in the.
Yeah, correct. So in that slok, is that Paradha is the word, or
Like multiplied by 100. So it says
the
Brahmanando Bhave Disa Sat Paradhar Gunakrita, right? Guna, like you multiply, Sat Parad, Parad, Parad Gunakrita.
That way we are even learning about mathematics, right?
Yeah.
What's that number?
Right. It's like we have a lot of quantitative measurements in Srimad Bhagavatam also, actually, right? Like just when starting with how long is one Lord Brahma's day, right? I think we all know that by now, right? How long is one day of Lord Brahma?
4,032,000,000.
Right. 4,032,000,000 years. Yeah, that's one day of Lord Brahma. So cool. Yeah, but the important part which is mentioned is by constantly engaging in the service of the Lord and thinking of his lotus feet, one is automatically freed from all material contamination. So we don't really have to do too much other than besides following certain rules, right? We constantly do the devotional service, the things will happen by itself, is what is mentioned, right? Okay.
Koti prayaso surbalaka hare rupasane swe hridi chidravat sata swasya smana shakyur shesh dehinam samantan yant kim vishyo papadne. O my friends, sons of Asuras, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his super soul feature always exists within the course of the hearts of all living entities. Indeed, he is the well-wisher and friend of all living entities. And there's no difficulty in worshipping the Lord. Why then should people not engage in his devotional service? Why are they so addicted to unnecessarily producing artificial paraphernalia for sense gratification? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, why Vishyopa Padane hai? There's no difficulty in worshipping the Lord, is what Prahlāda Maharaj is telling everyone. Yeah. Yeah, Tarun.
To go back to Godhead, one may live alone anywhere, in any condition, and simply sit down, meditate upon the super soul, and chant and hear about the Lord. Thus, there is no difficulty in approaching the Lord. Ananta Gobhir Visatam Tamisram Tamisram. Because of inability to control the senses, one must go through great endeavor to go to hell. But if one is sensible, he can very easily obtain the flavor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Lord is always with him. By the simple method of Swarnam Kirtanam Vishnu, the Lord is satisfied. Indeed, the Lord says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yo me bhaktya prayachati Tad aham bhakti uparatam asnami prayatata manaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I'll accept it. Bhagavad Gita 9.26. One can meditate upon the Lord anywhere and everywhere. Thus, Prahlāda Maharaj advised his friends, the sons of the demons, to take this path back home, back to Godhead without difficulty. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. So pretty important how simply it's mentioned that it's not really difficult to do the devotional service, which of course we know it's not very easy, right? But it's mentioned that it's not very difficult because you can chant anywhere and in any condition, is what is mentioned here, right? The Lord is always with everyone, and the Lord himself, the Lord Shri Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita is Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. All I need is with love. If you offer me, even if a leaf or a flower or a fruit or water, I will accept it. So that dedication needs to be there. One can meditate upon the Lord anywhere and everywhere. Yeah? And that's what even Prahlāda Maharaj is advising all. Rinaji?
प्रायः कलत्रं पशवः सुतादयो गृहामही कुञ्जर कोशभूतयः सर्वे अर्थकामाः क्षणभङ्गुरायुषः कुर्वन्ति मर्त्यस्य कियत् प्रियं चला. One's riches, beautiful wife and female friends, one's sons and daughters, one's residence, one's domestic animals like cows, elephants, and horses, one's treasury, economic development, and sense gratification. Indeed, even the lifetime in which one can enjoy all these material opulences are certainly temporary and flickering. Since the opportunity of human life is temporary, what benefit can these material opulences give to a sensible man who has understood himself to be eternal? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so one who is eternal, one who has got the transcendental awakening, he knows that everything else is temporary, is what is being mentioned. And in fact, this is the opportunity of human life, right? And as we know, the human life is temporary, right? More and more focus should be given to devotional service, is what is being mentioned by Prahlāda Maharaj, because Sarva Artha Kamaha is Kshanabhang Rayusu. Yeah, it's all Kshan, like very temporary. So why not focus on devotional service? Evam hi lokah क्रतुभिः कृता अमी क्षयिष्णवः सातियशयान निर्मलाः तस्माद् दृष्टश्रुतदूषणं परं भक्त्यो अक्तयेशं भजता आत्मलब्धये. It is learned from Vedic literature that by performing great sacrifices, one may elevate himself to the heavenly planets. However, although life on the heavenly planets is hundreds and thousands of times more comfortable than life on earth, the heavenly planets are not pure, nirmala, or free from the taint of material existence. The heavenly planets are also temporary, and therefore they are not the goal of life. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, has never been seen or heard to possess inappropriate. Consequently, for your own benefit and self-realization, you must worship the Lord with great devotion as described in the revealed scriptures, is what is being mentioned by Prahlāda Maharaj. Yeah, Bhajita Atma Labdaye is saying that even the heavenly planets are temporary. Yeah, so if you go to the Om Bhur Bhuvasva, right, there are how many planets are there in this universe?
14.
14 planets, right? And we are like on Earth, we are 7. Yeah. And what is being mentioned is like in birth and death scenarios, based on the karmas, sometimes we are at a higher planet, sometimes on the Earth, sometimes we are on the bottom planets and things like that, right? And what is being mentioned that even if someone is wishing Swarg or heavenly planets, even that is temporary. Yeah. Because we know that, one day of Devatas is 365 solar days. Yeah, one day is 365 solar days, one day of Devatas. But at the end of the day, it's still limited, right? So even if we think about Lord Brahma, His age is 300 trillion years, but that is still limited, right? There is still a time boxed duration in all these planets. And that's why they are not the goal of life. Yeah, what Prahlāda Maharaj is saying is that for your own benefit and self-realization, you must worship the Lord, yeah, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, with great devotion. And that is described in the scriptures as well. Yeah. And again, a nice, but here, let's read Anilji.
According to one's activities of piety, in different degrees, one obtains different standards of life, but none of them are permanent, and therefore they are all impure. Consequently, one should not endeavor to be promoted to the higher planetary systems only to return to this earth or descend still lower to the hellish planets. To stop this cycle of going up and coming down, one must take to Krishna consciousness. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore said, Brahmand Brahmite Pona Bhagyavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Paye Bhakti Lata Beya. Chapter CC Madhya 19.151. The living entity is rotating in the cycle of birth and death, going sometimes to the higher planets and sometimes to the lower planets, but that is not the solution to the problems of life. But if by the grace of Krishna one is fortunate enough to meet a guru, a representative of Krishna, one gets the clue to returning home, back to Godhead, having achieved self-realization. This is what is actually desirable. Bhajatatma, labadhe, one must take to Krishna consciousness for self-realization. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, one must take to Krishna consciousness. And we read what are the 9 devotional methodology for that, right? Shavanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Shranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasham, Sakyam, and Atmanivedanam. So there are so many different ways, right? We can do the devotional service and surrender to Lord Shri Krishna. Okay.
Idarth karmani vivad namanya sakrinar karutyo karatyoto vipraya samodham vidante phalam. A materialistic person thinking himself very advanced in intelligence continually acts for economic development, but again and again, as enunciated in the Vedas, he is frustrated by material activities, either in this life or in the next. Indeed, the results one obtains are inevitably the opposite of those one desires. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So it doesn't really matter how advanced one is in intelligence. Yeah, it all ends. Tarun?
Sukhaya dukkhamokshaya sankalpa iha karmina sada prohtihaya dukkham antaya sukhavratah. In this material world, every materialistic desires to achieve happiness and diminish his distress, and therefore he acts accordingly. Actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress begin. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Basically, what Prahlāda Maharaj is saying is that Sukhaya Dukh Mokshaya, right? Like every materialistic, of course, we all want to be happy. Every time you ask anyone, whatever we are doing or whatever anyone wants to do is for the happiness, right? But that's never achieved. It's all like we try to go for vacation, like somebody becomes a billionaire, somebody becomes what, president, prime minister, whatever. Still, the happiness is not achieved, is what is being mentioned, right? Because of the temporary condition, right? Temporary material condition. Rinaji?
Kaman kamayate kamir arthmiha purusha savai dehastu parakyo bhanguro yatyupati cha. A living entity desires comfort for his body and makes many plans for his purpose, but actually the body is the property of others. Indeed, the perishable body embraces the living entity and then leaves him aside. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. See, right? Everyone desires comfort for his body and tries to make a suitable situation for this purpose, forgetting that the body is meant to be eaten by dogs, jackals, or moths and thus turned into useless tool as you are. The living entity wastes his time in a futile attempt to gain material possessions for the comfort of one body after another. Yeah, totally entangled into materialistic approach. किमु व्यवहिता तप्य केदार गार धनादय राज्य कोशग जामात्य भृत्याप्ता ममतास्पदा. Since the body itself is ultimately meant to become stool or earth, what is the meaning of the paraphernalia related to the body, such as wives, residences, wealth, children, relatives, servants, friends, kingdoms, treasuries, animals, and ministers? They are also temporary. What more can be said about this? Is what Prahlāda Maharaj is telling all his friends, right? That all this is temporary. What else and how should he explain this further, right? Anilji?
किमे तैरात्मनुस्तक्षय सह देहेन नश्वरैः अनर्थैरर्थ शंका शरणित्यानंद रसोदधे. All this paraphernalia is very near and dear as long as the body exists. But as soon as the body is destroyed, all things related to the body are also finished. Therefore, actually, one has nothing to do with them. But because of ignorance, one accepts them as valuable. Compared to the ocean of eternal happiness, they are most insignificant. What is the use of such insignificant relationships for the eternal living being? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. And so now this is something we all know, right, for a fact, right? As soon as the body is destroyed, all things related to the body are also finished, right? This is a fact. Like there's no philosophical thing in this, right? So what is being mentioned here is that so compared to the ocean of eternal happiness, all the temporary materialistic pleasures are insignificant, is what is being mentioned. Yeah. The ocean of eternal happiness, they are most insignificant. So I'll see like, some people will say, oh, those people became sadhus, they are wasting their life. You'll find a lot of people saying such kind of things, right? People becoming sadhus, they don't do anything, what are they doing? And they're wasting their life. But the reality is, they are thinking that all the people who are materialistic are wasting their life, right? Because the human life is so temporary, and maybe they have the eternal happiness, right? That all these other things are insignificant. That's what Prahlāda Maharaj is also mentioning, right? It says here, Krishna consciousness, devotional service to Krishna is the ocean of eternal bliss. In comparison to this eternal bliss, the so-called happiness of society, friendship, and love is simply useless and insignificant. One should therefore not be attached to temporary things. One should take to Krishna consciousness and become eternally happy. Yeah. Prem?
Niruptyatmi swartha kiyande bruto sura nisheda nishekadish vavasthasu klish manasya karmabhi. My dear friends, O sons of the Asuras, the living entity receives different types of bodies according to his previous fruitive activities. Thus, he is seen to suffer with references to his particular body in all conditions of life. Beginning with the infusion into the womb, please tell me, therefore, after full consideration, what is the living entity's actual interest in the fruitive activities, which result in hardship and misery? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So Prahlāda Maharaj is asking, telling everyone that based on the karam be here, yeah, getting different types of bodies, different sufferings. And so he's asking them after full consideration, yeah, why should be interested in fruitive activities, which is only resulting in misery, is what is being answered. Yeah, Anilji?
कर्माणि रवते देहि देहनात्मानु वर्तिना कर्म विस्तनुते देहमुभयं त्वविवेकतः. The living entity who has received his present body because of his past fruitive activity may end the results of his actions in this life. But this does not mean that he is liberated from bondage to material bodies. The living entity receives one type of body, and by performing actions with the body, he creates another. Thus, he transmigrates from one body to another through repeated birth and death because of his gross ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So what is mentioned is the living entity receives one type of body, and then by performing actions, right, by our karmas, what we get another body, right? So even if somebody is doing all the satogun, right, totally engaged in good activities, good dharmic activities like donations and service to the world and all that, he is still doing the karmas, right? He is still doing the karmas, so he'll get good results, right? So maybe he'll be born like whatever in good conditions and great conditions, right? And great families and things like that. But he's still in the materialistic fruitive activities, death and birth and death cycle, right? So what is the way of getting rid of the karmas? How can one get rid of the karmas, right? What's the suggested way? How can one get rid of this cycle of birth and death, right?
Bhakti Yoga, that's 9.
Right, right. By surrendering to Lord Shri Krishna, right? By surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And surrendering means you are surrendering all your karmas as well. And how do you surrender? Is by those devotional service. Surrendering means you get engaged into devotional service of the Lord, and then those 9 activities, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam. Tarun?
तस्मद् अर्थश्च कमश्च धर्मश्च यद् अपरसयः भजत् तनिहयात्मनम् अनिहं हरिं ईश्वरम्. The 4 principles of advancement in spiritual life, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, all depend on the disposition of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, my dear friends, follow in the footsteps of devotees. Without desire, fully depend upon the disposition of the Supreme Lord. Worship Him, the Super Soul, in devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, Bhajatani Hari Ishwaram. Reenaji?
सर्वेषामपि भूतानां हरिरात्मैश्वरः प्रियः भूतैर्महद्दद्भिः स्वकृते कृतानां जीवसंज्ञितः. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is the soul and the super soul of all living entities. Every living entity is a manifestation of his energy in terms of the living soul and the material body. Therefore, the Lord is the most dear and he is the supreme controller. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Devo asuro manusho vayaksho gandharva eva bhaj mukunda charanam swastimana shadhata vayam. If a demigod, demon, human being, yaksh, gandharva, or anyone within this universe renders service to the lotus feet of Mukunda, who can deliver liberation, he is actually situated in the most auspicious condition of life, exactly like us, the Mahajans headed by Prahlāda Maharaj. Is what Prahlāda Maharaj is saying, that since all of us, Prahlāda Maharaj is giving this transcendental knowledge to the friends, and when they are situated in this way, right, Bhaj Mukund Charanam, yeah, transcendental knowledge, and they are talking about the devotional service, is saying that's the most auspicious condition of life. Yeah, says here Prahlāda Maharaj, by his living example, requested his friends to engage in devotional service. Whether in demigod society, Asur society, human society, or Gandharva society, every living entity should take shelter of the lotus feet of Mukund and thus become perfect in good fortune. Yeah. Right, we are going to pause here. It's 10:25. So, and since we are talking about the devotional service to Mukund, we are going to hear a very beautiful devotional bhajan by Vinod Agrawal, yeah, favorite of Ajay. I think Ajay couldn't join us today, but we are going to listen to the bhajan anyways, yeah. So, let's hear a very nice, beautiful bhajan, Gopal Murliya Wale by Vinod Agrawal. We'll hear it for like 5 to 7 minutes.
मेरी दुनिया आप है, आपसे है दुनिया मेरी, मेरी दुनिया आप है। इस भरी दुनिया में मेरा कृष्ण प्यारा, इस भरी दुनिया में मेरा हमनवा कोई नहीं, हमनवा कोई नहीं, जिसको अपना कह सकूं वो बंदा परवर आप है, जिसको अपना कह सकूं वो बंदा परवर आप है। मेरी जिंदगी की आरज़ू, मेरी जिंदगी की आरज़ू, मेरी तमन्ना आप है प्यारे, मेरी तमन्ना आप है प्यारे, मेरी तमन्ना आप है प्यारे, मेरी तमन्ना आप है। जिंदगी की आरज़ू मेरी तमन्ना आप है। श्याम सुंदर सांवरे मेरे तो सब कुछ आप है। श्याम सुंदर सांवरे मेरे तो सब कुछ आप है। अब कहाँ जाऊं मुरारी, मैं तेरा दर छोड़कर, अब कहाँ जाऊं मुरारी, मैं तेरा दर छोड़कर। क्यों आप ही हैं दिलबर मेरे, मेरे रहबर आप हैं। आज के जमाने के लिए दोनों बात इम्पोर्टेंट है, दिलबर तो हो लेकिन साथ में रहबर भी हो। रहबर यानी रास्ता दिखाने वाला, मार्गदर्शक, पथ प्रदर्शक। ये ना हो कि रहबर के बदले वो राहजन हो, लूटने वाला दिलबर निकल जाए। इसलिए कभी बाद में पछतावा हो, धोखा हो। बहुत जरूरी है दिलबर के साथ साथ मार्गदर्शक भी हो। अब कहाँ जाऊं मुरारे, अब कहाँ जाऊं मुरारी, मैं तेरा दर छोड़कर, आप ही हैं दिलवर मेरे, मेरे रहबर आप हैं, आपसे है दुनिया मेरी दुनिया आप है,
बहुत प्यारे।
आपसे है दुनिया मेरी दुनिया आप है। जब सब कुछ आप ही हैं तो भजू तो गोपाल एक से हूं तो गोपाल एक, एकत्व का प्रतीक। भजू तो गोपाल एक से हूं तो गोपाल एक, हर मेरो मन मानो सब भांति नंदलाल सो।
At Amica Insurance, we know this isn't a house. It's more than that.
मेरे देवी देव गुरु मात पिता बंधु इष्ट मित्र सखा हरि ना तो एक गोपाल सो, वो मित्र सखा हरि ना तो एक गोपाल सो। हरिश्चंद्र और सोना कछु संबंध मेरो, हरिश्चंद्र और सोना कछु संबंध मेरो, आसरो सदैव एक लोचन विशाल सो। जो मांगू तो गोपाल सो, न मांगू तो गोपाल सो, जो मांगू तो गोपाल सो, न मांगू तो गोपाल सो। जो रीझू तो गोपाल सो, जो खींचू तो गोपाल सो, जो रीझू तो गोपाल सो, जो खींचू तो गोपाल सो। गोपाल मुरलिया वाले नंदलाल मुरलिया वाले, नंदलाल मुरलिया वाले, गोपाल मुरलिया वाले, नंदलाल मुरलिया वाले, गोपाल मुरलिया वाले, नंदलाल मुरलिया वाले। गोविंद
All right. Nice bhajan, Gopal Muraliya.
Yeah.
Huh? Exactly like we're reading about the devotion to Gopal of Shri Krishna, right? And beautiful bhajan. So it's Wednesday, long break again, long weekend. And we'll see you on Monday, 9:30. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Enjoy the week.
All right. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.